Welcome to Finance with Factor,
Oops, apparently we're already recording, so here we go.
a place you can come to laugh and learn from local experts who love to discuss everything related to the world of real estate.
Weird passion. But it's one that I actually share a little bit, so it makes me a weirdo with you.
Each week, we'll cover a unique topic
Let's talk about condos.
to help you understand the mortgage industry, navigate the home buying process, and grow your business while maintaining a slice of sanity.
Okay, fine. I've been confused by a lot of things over the past few years.
Now that he's climbed safely atop his soapbox, here's your host, a senior loan officer with Movement Mortgage, Jason Factor.
Thanks for making time to do this with me.
My pleasure. Yeah, I mean,
We'll see.
yeah, well, yeah, right.
To be determined. No, it's been a crazy few weeks. So saying thank you for making time to do this is sort of an understatement. I'm sure you've been as overwhelmed as many of the people listening to this have been with the market volatility, and it makes for a really well-timed conversation on what I hope to pick your brain on, which is sort of the fallacy that is timing the market.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been quite a couple of weeks in the business, to say volatile. Volatility, it's an understatement in the last couple of weeks. So
Jeremy is a financial advisor with Arsenal Financial, and I wanted to have him on because I wanted to pick his brain on this concept and some of the calls I'm sure he's been getting. But before we do that, Jeremy, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jeremy Vaille. I'm a certified financial planner, and I've been client-facing, working with individuals, families, and businesses for the last 8 years or so. Prior to that, I was at Fidelity. I did a lot of home office jobs and worked on the annuity side of the business in the life insurance space. And then prior to that, this is actually my second or third career, you could say. I was an engineer. I was classically trained as an aerospace engineer, and spent about 6 years in that space out on the West Coast, working for some larger players such as Boeing or Lockheed Martin. So yeah, it's we're a small firm. Our broker dealer is LPL Financial, which is the largest independent broker dealer in the country. We're a team of 3 advisors and 2 support staff operations people that help us on a day-to-day basis. So we're pretty small, tight family, but we have a large firm behind us.
Now, before I ask you any questions, I'm going to give some disclosures. Nothing shared today on today's episode is meant to be advice that you should go out and execute. Please do not execute any trades or perform any financial actions as a result of today's conversation without consulting your professional advisor and whomever you look to for advice. Again, today's conversation is a very macro level conversation about the idea that there are strategic ways to navigate a volatile market. Jumping in and thinking you know everything and can time it perfectly is probably a bit of a fool's errand. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. So what have you seen over the last couple of weeks? And what are some of the most common calls, questions that you're getting?
I'd say that a lot of our work has been proactive. So we've been calling a lot of our clients, just making sure that they feeling okay. They understand that this is a normal part of the process. Now, how we got there is probably not normal, but recognizing that, we have times like these, and this is why we really start with planning, right? Financial planning is really the core of what we do, the foundation of what we do. The financial markets are a means to the ends for a lot of clients, right? We're trying to get them from point A to point B to point C in their goals in life. And it's just the best way, along with owning real estate, owning small pieces of companies, right? The best companies around the world. So really taking that in context when it comes to putting that into the overall financial plan, right? And understanding that there's reasons why we have what we have. We invest the way we do. It's purposeful, it's intentional, but recognize that we do expect that, every 5 to 6 years, we're going to see some sort of 20+% correction. Every year, annually, right? You can expect a minus on average 14% intra-year, even though you're positive 75% of the time, right? So there is volatility with stock market investing, and that's just something that we're continuing to make our clients, or remind our clients that that is a phenomenon that we expect, and that they should expect that as well as they invest.
And the old Tyson adage, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. If your goal is to end the fight in 10 seconds, well, that first punch really matters, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to have a plan right away. But I always say this about the home buying process. So last week, or over the last month, really, last few years, we've seen wild volatility in that. I mean, at one point, right after the tariffs were announced, I was pulling a 30-year fixed at 5.99. And then turn around not even a couple hours later, and it was up into the 8s, and then back into the 7s and 6s and 7s. And it just, that kind of volatility is not manageable for home buyers. When you're stepping into the market, it's tough if you're trying to get out of the market. But if you're in it for the long term, what I always say to clients is, you can't think of the volatility. The volatility doesn't matter unless you're day trading.
Right.
Right? Like, if you're day trading homes, if you're flipping homes, the volatility matters. If you're in a home and you're saying, I'm going to be here for 3 years, 5 years, well, then the market conditions really matter, because you don't want to sell 2 years from now and find yourself underwater. But if you're looking at this as a long-term acquisition, say like putting money in my 401k, I still put money in my 401k over the last month.
Yeah.
I didn't stop because the markets were down or up or sideways and back over again. And so it's the same thing to me when you're buying a house. You have to look at it as a long-term investment and treat it with the same kind of difference that you would to your 401k, where I'm going to do this because it's the right move for me. And the acquisition cost isn't quite as meaningful as it is on flipping penny stock.
Right. And our investment always aligns with our time horizon, to your point, right? You might not, for expenses that you have within the next year or 2 years, right? You're not going to invest the same way as you would in your 401k, right? And it's interesting, like, the stock market is one of those few things where as soon as there's a 20% discount, people run for the hills, right? The panic sets in as soon as there's a discount, right? Anytime else there's a discount, people are jumping, right? Jumping to take advantage of that. But stock market, if there's a discount, 20% correction, 10% correction, I got to get out, right? I got to sell. I mean, like, it's the panic selling begins to take place. And that's, it's not necessarily the way you want to have to respond when things go down during times.
Well, the people that then end up panic selling typically are the ones that can't afford to lose, right? So it's sort of like when you're playing poker or craps at the table at the casino, like, the people with the biggest bankroll can withstand the runs in either direction. And so how do you kind of coach your clients through that moment of panic? You said you're being proactive and reaching out to people.
Yep.
What is the best way to mitigate that level of panic? And maybe to not to lead you to the question or the answer, but is it basically planning?
I mean, it really is. It really comes down to that. So, like, when we're talking about stock investing and we're talking about a particular investment for an account, right? We're like, we want to get a real understanding of our clients' preferences and behaviors, because behaviors is what's really driving the whole thing, right? Like, if you take a look at overall investment, investor type behaviors and their returns relative to what you might get in the index, far less than what you see, right? I think some of the numbers I have, you have over the course of a 20-year time horizon, you might have an average investor getting about 2.9% return, whereas the stock market, if you stayed fully invested the whole time, is more in the neighborhood of 9.9, right? So you're giving up that much return. And a lot of that's by investor behavior, right? It's not necessarily, well, there are cases where you're under diversified, or you're not uh, you're that's some of the contributing factors, but the majority is that they just jump on a trend or a particular hot item, and next thing you know, the hay's already in the barn and they've missed it, right? So those are some of the factors why your investor has a lesser of a return.
I'd imagine that the hardest part about timing the market for your average person is we just don't have as much information, right? Like, there's no way we can have more information than Jamie Dimon has at his fingertips. Like, it's
Right.
just not humanly possible.
Yep. Yeah. Right.
Without doing so illegally, I guess.
Yes.
Without having inside information, how can you do it better,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so if you're operating on the assumption that we're all late to the game to begin with, that we're all going to be trailing in reaction, how do you make sure, and the key word might have been in the way you described that, diversifying, but how do you make sure that your plan can navigate these ups and downs?
Like I said, I think it's all about kind of having your various goals mapped out, right? And different investment buckets for the particular goals. And knowing that's kind of what we don't want we're not trying to beat the market. We're trying to participate in and take advantage of market type returns, right? And making sure that we're staying in a diversified way. You think about investing out there in a diversified way, you think, oh, I'm going to get the index. I'm going to get the S&P index. But when you look at that under the hood of that thing, right, it's very skewed towards the Mag 7 stocks, right? Some of these top players in the space. You're not really getting a broad diversified exposure, right? So when we think about diversification, it's a little bit different than you might hear kind of at the barbecue at the for Memorial Day or something like that. This is more kind of a very deliberate and prescribed kind of approach to diversification. And it's going to include a lot of different asset classes, right? You're talking about stocks, you're talking about bonds, you're talking about alternatives, some commodities, and of course, real estate as a fifth asset class, along with cash. Those are all kind of important things to have in your portfolio. And then back to kind of like having the different buckets for the different goals and objectives. You want to allow enough time in order to weather some of these storms. If I've done my job right, because you set aside enough 0 to 2 bucket, 2 to 10 bucket in a conservative way so that you're not drawing out of a depreciating asset in the case of a declining market.
Sure. And I would friendly challenge the idea that you don't have to do that, because I mean, I think when you run all and this is something that I love to come in and speak with advisors about, because I'll do workshops on them and stuff, but reverse mortgage is one of the least used and most advantageous products out there because it's a tax-free way to navigate the market so that you don't have to draw those buckets like you're talking about, right? And so I think they often get tagged as if I do my job in retirement, I don't need it. And I think what people miss is that when you run the Monte Carlos, the people that have the most money actually make the most money when leveraging them correctly because of all the tax incentives that you're able to do, where you can depreciate those assets while a market is depreciating without drawing on the and give your investments time to recover. And I think that's really the key in this kind of market, is just, again, like knowing how to strategically work with your advisor in a way so that you can strategically diversify your investments so that when certain markets are up, you are only pulling from the right buckets.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we think about like retirement income, right? And what's funding that. Back in the day, you'd have Social Security, you had a pension, right? And you had, your own personal savings. Well, you got like 1.5 of those legs left at this point. I mean, to say the least, right? Most places, most people aren't getting a pension, right? Social Security's, there's a lot of talk about Social Security out in the world, but that's really not going to fund your whole retirement profile, right? So a lot of it has to come from personal savings and kind of other resources or other sources. And that's really where we come in, is that setting up all those different buckets, whether or not it's an income annuity or it's an investment account, continuing to manage those over time, and then drawing on the buckets in the proper way, right? Because everyone's really good at, or has had a lot of experience with growing the bucket. It's when we transition into those first years of retirement where it's like, how do I draw on this stuff, right? How do I use all this nest egg, these resources that I built up over time to now fund my life, fund my living expenses? I don't have a paycheck coming in anymore. So how do I create my paycheck out of these buckets?
And how do you make sure that it is around to meet all the goals that you have and still give you the legacy that you want to leave, whatever that might be? And honestly, for some people, the legacy is like bupkis, and that's fine. And for others, it's I want to give to local charities. For others, it might be I want to support family members, whatever that is. Like drawing from the right buckets in retirement will ensure and protect that legacy for whatever it is you want to leave behind as well.
Right. And there's a
The
lot
only inevitable thing about it is that people are living longer and those buckets are becoming more and more stressed, but eventually it's going to all transition into an estate.
Right.
Like that's the inevitable part of it.
And each of those buckets have different tax ramifications, different kind of estate planning elements to them. So that's where it gets a little bit of the creative element to like, hey, well, I'm taking my Social Security. I got a little part-time job. Should I be taking from my Roth IRA bucket, or should I be drawing down, doing maybe Roth conversions before I get to my required minimum distribution age in my 70s, and kind of having those decision points along the way. Other one that's big is like, when should I take my social? Should I take it 62, full retirement age, or wait till 70?
And the other one that I see a lot is, in reference to the equity in your home, is do I just leave it and let my kids deal with it after I pass? Do I take a home equity line and borrow it? Or do I take the reverse mortgage and generate income or savings or assets out of it? So there are a variety of different ways, again, that you can treat each bucket. Each of them have dramatically different impacts, tax implications, and even income implications in retirement as you go through your estate planning.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we go back to that kind of talking about timing the market, right? And I got some data on that. If you look back,
please shoot.
If you look back at let's get nerdy. If you look back from January 3rd, 2005 to December 31st, 2004, so pretty much a 20-year stretch there. 7 of the 10 best days occurred within 2 weeks of the 10 worst days. So in other words, 6 of the 7 best days occurred after the worst day. Right when you're emotionally wrecked, right? You're like, oh, I just lost, like, you take Thursday and Friday 2 weeks ago as an example, right? We're down 5 and 6% back-to-back days, so we're down 11%. You had a 12% on the NASDAQ last week, right? Positive. At the time where you're feeling the worst coming into that week, Monday, Tuesday, right? Markets just got cratered, and now you see a 12% pop. So if you were fully invested over that 20-year time period in the S&P, you're 10.4% return annualized, right? Pretty good return. But if you missed 20 of the best days, so that's 2 of the best days a year on average, you only had a 3.5% return.
And that is volatility. It's sort of the idea we talk about, riding waves and fighting currents. I mean, you can swim upstream all you want. The goal is to be able to safely navigate those waves by going downstream.
Exactly.
And so I think that's kind of the key to all of this is, again, I'm not a certified financial planner. I am a mortgage nerd. I let Jeremy and his team handle, the actual conversations in the same way that I'm sure you let the estate planners handle the estate conversations and CPAs handle the tax planning. But together, if you're a home buyer out there, if you're nearing retirement, if you are a person trying to navigate these turbulent waters on your own, it's probably time to build a team around you of experts. In the same way, I make a lot of medical and food analogies and things like that. But in the same way that I don't go to my general practitioner when I am having a pulmonary embolism, right. If I'm in the midst of the heart attack, I'm not waiting at family care. I'm going to the cardiologist. if I need some dramatic brain surgery, I'm going to the specialist. And it's the same thing in your financial world. Like, you need to treat your finances with the same sort of care and deference that you would any other aspect of your financial
Right.
life. And I think your home, your retirement, your investment strategies should all follow suit, where you speak with the advisors and build the team around you so that they can all consult in concert. You don't want to operate on the heart if you didn't know that was going to impact the other area of your body.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a great point, Jason. Like, I'm not an expert at everything. I'm kind of like your quarterback, if you will, from a financial perspective, right? But I'm sending clients to you, sending clients to insurance providers, sending clients to CPAs or estate planning partners, because they're experts, right? They can navigate have those legal and tax conversations and specific intricacies of the mortgage business. And as long as we have a trusted team, right, that can work together, and I love working in collaboration with other professionals, because we learn a lot together and we can have better outcomes for clients when we do that. Then we're going to be much better off, and we're going to help move the needle for clients in a better way.
And to be clear, you don't have to use our recommendations. Like, please bring your own people. Let's build a team in the same way that, again, to go back to the medical analogy, like if I walked into a hospital with a heart attack, that doctor is going to contact my primary care physician, look up my file, and they will collaborate together. Even though one might be in California and one might be in Boston, they're going to work together to get through and triage that situation appropriately. So if you have your own people that you trust, bring them into the fold and into the conversation so that we can fill in the gaps and build that full collaborative team around you.
Right. Yeah, I like the medical analogy. We actually say the same thing. Like, we don't do the MRI before, well, we do the MRI before we do the surgery, right? So people come in and they were like, hey, how do we invest this account? Well, we need to take a step back, right? We need to do the MRI. We need to do the diagnostics, understand what you're looking to accomplish, understand the way you tick a little bit. And then it's at that point we can start doing the investment, and that's the surgery, right? Because we want to make sure that we're taking the whole package into consideration before we put that dollar to work.
And the biggest risk to all this is that you come in and you need immediate surgery, right? Like, that's when I was telling my parents the other week, we were at dinner, and unfortunately, all my conversations eventually get to some form of mortgages. I don't mean to, but they all end up there. But I was trying to tell them that they're fine financially. Like, I think they're good. At least they keep saying that they're fine. But I was like, please don't be drawing down during this period as much as you can. Like, please go look into the reverse mortgage. You guys have $600,000 of equity sitting in this house, totally unmanaged and untapped, that you could be earning interest on instead of making payments. I was like, do whatever you want with that money, but leverage it while it's here. Your equity has never been higher in the history of in the history of the world. Your home equity has never been higher, and yet Harlan Acklin, the head of our reverse mortgage division, says over $17 trillion in unmanaged assets sitting right there in home equity that could be put to management and put to good use for you as a homeowner. So, I mean, like, there are tools out there and resources out there that, again, when everyone works in concert together, put you in a better position and can help you navigate these ups and downs without the stress of an emergency made decision in panic.
Right.
Planning.
Well, we always like to say that there's no financial emergency, right?
I mean, that's the goal, right?
Oh, right.
Unfortunately, we do see them, but the goal is no financial emergencies.
Right.
With the right preventative care, you can eliminate the financial emergency.
Right. Yeah, it's just it's hard to do anything when it's this volatile, right? And how one tweet can send the markets in a whole different direction, right? Intraday. So it's
intraday.
It's
right.
hard to think that you're going to pick the 2 best days of the year and get the 70% of the return that the market's going to get, right? So, and like I said, it's going to follow the bad days, right when you're not feeling that great, right? Because one of the things about, behavioral finance, like uh, a loss feels twice as bad as the measurable gain on the other side, right? So if you lose $100, that feels twice as bad as you gaining $100, right? So that's kind of the things that we're taking into account when we're thinking about our clients, and we're thinking about, protection and downside, and doing the things that we can to make sure that they remain whole and still can achieve the goals that they need to achieve.
And for anyone who doesn't believe Jeremy, just think back if you ever played sports. It's the agony of defeat and the relief of winning, right? Like I don't remember barely any good things in maybe it's because I wasn't that good, but I don't remember very many happy moments in my athletic career. I remember the painful ones like they were yesterday. They still haunt me. And it's the same thing in that's the behavioral finance that you're talking about there.
Yeah. And it's amazing how much of a lot of us think, hey, we're immune to this, right? But even us who, us advisors, right? We're always, we know better, right? But we're not immune to it either, right?
You just can't help it sometimes.
It's just human nature, So,
yeah, absolutely. If people want to fight their own human nature and get in touch with you to put themselves on a team with some experts, what is a way that they can reach out to you, your firm, or at least learn more about your practice?
Arsenal Financial, you can email us at info@arsenalfinancial.com, or me directly, Jeremy@arsenalfinancial.com. And you can call us at the office at 781-335-9100, 781-335-9100. And that'll go to Heather in our main office here in Norwell.
And if you have questions on, timing the market, again, if you're a real estate investor who's flipping properties, good luck, right? Time the market. Try to pick your spots, pick your investments the same way that you would a day trader with stocks. But if you're a home buyer out there looking for a home that's going to be a long-term investment, let's treat it with the same kind of care that you would any other long-term financial investment. And let's make methodical, strategic decisions. And let's do that together. I'd be happy to help you, or contact a loan officer that you trust to help you walk through the numbers and make decisions that are based on not interest rates, because those go up and down. I know that sounds insane, but based on monthly payments and total out-of-pocket costs. The interest rate and your purchase price, those will vary. What matters is how much am I paying right now and how much am I paying each month. And if you focus on those, you can navigate this market with a lot of confidence. Jeremy, thank you very much for making time to do this with me today. I deeply appreciate it. We'll get all of this compliance approved, and then we'll put this out for everyone to enjoy. And if you do have questions, I do highly recommend reach out to a certified financial planner that you trust, or someone in your network. And if you don't have someone, Jeremy's always a great resource.
Thanks, Jason. Look forward to the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Finance with Factor. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Then if you really like us, open another podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or really wherever else you enjoy podcasts. Search Finance with Factor and do it again. The more places you like, share, and follow helps our ratings. But that can be our little secret. Have a question about today's episode or an idea for an upcoming episode? Post a comment. For more content, follow Jason Factor on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Finance with Factor. All content discussed on Finance with Factor is self-published by Jason Factor, Senior Loan Officer, NMLS number 1401985. All rates, guidelines, and advice shared on this episode is subject to change. To contact Jason directly or for a full set of disclosures, visit his website at jasonfactor.com.
Jason Factor, NMLS number 1401985. Movement Mortgage supports equal housing opportunity. NMLS number 39179. NMLS, consumeraccess.org.